Hi, it's Jamie. I'm the Sewcial bee, and you are here to do my sew along for my 6-panel welder's cap. This is great for welders, pipe fitters, construction workers, all alike, okay? The first thing you want to do is print your pattern out. And you want to make sure that you're printing it out with a quality software. I highly recommend Adobe Acrobat. You can use it on your iPad, your tablet, or your laptop. Preferably your laptop, but you definitely need a good program because you need to be able to print out at 100% actual size. You do not want it to fit to page. Okay? You cut out your patterns. Make sure you cut them out on the inside of the black line. Inside of the black line. Get all of your pieces rounded up, cut out, and meet me back here at the sewing machine and we will start sewing. All right, now that we're at the sewing machine, we're going to have some fun here making our 6-panel welding cap. So you're going to want some tools handy. You want a really good hot iron, okay? Pressing, there's just no second best for pressing. So you can use any brand, but you want to make sure it's on high because you're using cotton, and you want to know that it has a good steam. If it does not have a good steam, then what you can use is just a simple spray bottle. Just a spray bottle with some water in it, and you'll create a good steam. The other thing that I really like using is highlighter tape. This is just bought at the Office Max or Amazon, anywhere. Highlighter tape is great because that's what I line my seam allowance with. So after you've done all of your measurements and you want to be really accurate, as we talked about with your measurements, you're going to use your chart right here on page 2. And for my husband, his head measures around 22.5. So I have his seam allowance actually right, and this is because I've made hundreds of these, but his seam allowance will be right between the 1/2 inch and the 3/8. So I'm going to use just a smidge over the 1/2, but not quite the 3/8. That's just where he likes it. That's just what he likes. So I use my seam gauge, and you put your, that's what this little hole right here in your seam gauge is for, okay? See this little hole? So we put, with your flywheel, you just want to set your needle in there, right down. Now this is right where your machine's going to be sewing, and you are going to be able to measure exactly where you want your stitching to be had. So line up your tape. You can use painter's tape. You can use anything. I just love this highlighter tape because it comes right off. It's not sticky and there's no residue. So I highly recommend getting yourself some of that. I think this is $1. I don't know. It's very, very low priced. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work with my outer fabric. Doesn't matter. You got to do your lining and your outer the exact same way. The only seam allowance that's going to be completely different is the okay, so as we start sewing, we want to make sure that we have our seam allowance measured out perfectly. Again, use your seam gauge and your highlighter tape and mark your spot. Now, I find that sweet spot between the 5/8 inch and the 1/2 inch. So I move mine over just about a 1/16 of an inch for my husband's hat. And I used the felt tip, you know, sewing with felt, little tip I gave you guys earlier, I made several of those, and this is exactly how he likes this fit. So that's what we're rolling with today. And I figured he needs some new welding caps. I need to show you guys how to make them. 2 birds, 1 stone. And when you get down to this point, you want to really make sure that you're sewing accurately, because this is the most crucial point, and it's how it fits around. And like I said, a needle movement to the right or to the left is going to make a difference. So we've got that. I use pinking shears. I don't finish it with the serger, but because, and I really would leave, I wouldn't even pink this if, I would even pink this if I didn't have this much seam allowance. So since his is about a 1/2 inch to just a little bit more, I'm going to pink my edges. If not, you can clip into them if you like that. Either one. You could even serge your edges ahead of time, or you could sew your seam and then serge, although you will have a little bit harder time pressing that with a good press. So I just pink it. You can, these are just Fiskars. I've had these probably for 20 years. I buy them, I bought them right at Joann's with a coupon. Not expensive. Definitely get yourself a pair. You don't need to clip into your seam to make a nice curve with pinks either. So we're going to go down the next. Now, I'm very comfortable with a little bit of gas on my sewing machine, okay? I can push that pedal. If you're not so comfortable, slow it down. And if you feel like you're going too fast and you can't control it with the pedal, I slowed mine all the way down, and this is as fast as I can have my machine go. And I definitely do this sometimes. I'll show you that when we put this together. So we've got one set of front and back done. We've got the other set that we're just clipping now. Get that clipped. Keep a scrap bucket next to you. Just throw it in the bin. Not going to do anything with that. We're going to set it aside and press it. Now, here is our bill. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this because some of you do have a hard time with the bill. So we want our pretty sides facing. Okay, your lining and your outer fabric. And then at the bottom of your sandwich, you put your batting. And I'm using wool batting. And I cut a whole bunch at the same time and probably went a little crazy and nicked it with my, it's a little short. It's fine. It's going to be just fine. I just use the edge of my presser foot here. You're not really using a seam allowance. You're just putting it together. Just sew around that. Okay. Keep your thread nippers close and nip your threads as you go. Yeah. Keep it nice and tidy. Now, you can pink this edge, or you can, see what I said? I was a little bit off, but by the time my seam allowance is sewn, you don't even notice it. You're fine. You can pink this edge. You don't have to. You can just clip into it if you want. Or 99% of the time, I don't mind that little bit of bulk there. I like the way it looks on the bill. I leave it and I just press it. So we have our pieces ready to press. We're going to go and you see you turn that inside out. Even without a press, it's looking great, right? Kind of fussy cut it. All right, so we're going to sew together the lining the exact same steps as we just did with the outer fabric. And then we're going to press all of that. Okay, now we're at the pressing station, and I'm going to show you a few of my favorite things over here that I love using. If you've watched my other welding cap patterns, I think I went over this, but obviously it's worth another shot here. So the first thing I love is a good steam iron. And I've used Rowentas, I've used all sorts of different things. My two favorite would be the Aliso and a Shark. This is going to be expensive, you know, $150 to $200. The Shark you can get for $40 to $50 on Amazon or Walmart. So I love both of those. You want to get the 800 watt, 17 or 1800 watt. So it makes a difference. Now, say you don't have a fancy steam iron. That's fine. Use your iron on hot, as hot as it'll go, and have a bottle of water or Mary Ellen's Best Press starch. And I love this stuff because it holds its shape while you're working with it. But just have a bottle of water. You can buy spray bottles at the Dollar Tree, just a spray bottle of water. But if you have a good steam in there, you get a perfect. Okay, let me see if I can. Yeah, you're seeing. Okay, just making sure you can see this. Then I just give it a little press from the other side. This piece is ready to go. So there's our first lining piece. All right, this is how I also use this. This is a wool mat. I love this. It's a wool pressing mat. You can find them on Amazon. I'll put a link to this in the description, but you can find them pretty much anywhere. And it helps distribute the heat back into your item. So the other thing I use is my wooden pressing tool. We call this one the everything tool, and my clapper. So these are my essentials. My iron, a pressing mat. You can just use your ironing board, but I'm just showing you what I use, and I think it makes a big difference. So your iron, your pressing mat, your clapper, and when we get to shaping the cap, a ham. You can make a ham, okay? It's the shape of an egg. Fill it as tight as you can fill it. I might even put like rice or something else in there to help me hold it because this has some weight to it. But these I think are $20 at Joann's, and you can use a half off coupon. They're in the notions aisle, or sometimes you can get them on Amazon. They sell out on Amazon a lot. So I love the ham. Okay. First pressing. We don't really need this yet. The first pressing is going to just be pressing this seam. I usually just press it to one edge. So I set the seam by ironing it, and then I just hold up the edge and I run my iron over the bottom part and give it some steam. Okay? And then I hold up the edge and I run my iron over the top and I give it some steam. And let me show you how that looks. Okay. Now, when you turn it inside out, it's perfect. Isn't that beautiful? It turned out really, really well. So that's how you do it. We'll do one more. So I'm going to set the seam, and I'm going to have to do this one backward. Set the seam, and I'll do the top first since I'm here. And then come back and do the bottom. You want to hold that out of the way so you don't get a crease. And that's how it looks. Perfect. Okay, so just go through and press the rest of your pieces, and I will show you how we construct them. Okay, so we're going to get our bill already here. So what I like to do is we turned it inside out when we were at the sewing machine, but I like to use my everything tool, and I go along that seam in there. And you can pink it or you cannot. We did on this case, but it turns beautifully. It's personal preference. So I like to make sure it's the exact way I want it before I press it, because when you press it, you're going to really condense those batting layer in there and your other layers together. So if you have a wonky stitch and you didn't get like a nice half circle shape on here, then, you know, go back, rip that stitch out, because it's going to drive you crazy. And then just, you know, restitch it. Just as long as you have the half circle shape. Again, a lot of steam. And you saw how thick that batting was, and it steams right down. So I think it turned out really well. And I love the camping scene on there, and that looks really cute with the batiks. So I'll show you one more time with my lining. You give it a good, this is called setting your stitches, and then you just turn it and you follow that seam with the tip of your iron. More steam, and it creates, it automatically, oops, I got a little crease. It automatically creates that beautiful shape in there. And we got the last one. And then we will go back and construct all of these. So the 6 panel is not any harder to do sewing wise than the 4 panel. What gets tricky is your sizing and how accurate you're measuring and how accurately you are sewing. So that is where the tricks come in. All right, let's take these back to the sewing machine and put them together. Okay, on the other segment, we did not use a lot of pins, or I didn't. You may have. And I guess we will, I'll just do the outer. Yeah, we'll start with the outer, because that's what I attach the bill to. So what you want to do is take one of your front or backs. It doesn't matter, they're exactly the same. And you're going to be matching your seam allowances. And this is pretty important step here. So I kind of butt those right up and I stick a pin. And then what I do is I take the edge of one and line the bottom up and pin. And then go to your other side and line the bottom up. So it's going to fit right in there. So you want to line that bottom right up. And you can clip if you want, but I do like the security of the pins. Okay, so now it looks funny, but when you move this fabric just a little bit out of the way, you can see that there is a gentle ease in here that just, the fabric wants to curve and it wants to line up. So what I do is go about 2 fingers away from my first pin and I put another one. And then I come to the top again, about 2 fingers away and put a pin. And then you can see that it just wants to line up. So then you align the edges and you put another pin. It's just a very slight ease in there. And that just creates the nice rounded edge for your head, for the crown of your noggin. So 2 inches, 2 finger lengths away, give or take. You just want it to be secure and pinned. And then again here. And if you're comfortable with not as many pins, by all means, you do not have to pin this many, but I'm helping you based on never making one, okay? So if you've never made a welding cap before, this is how you do it. Follow our seam allowance, back stitch, make sure you remove your pins. You can really set off the timing on your sewing machine by sewing over pins. I do not recommend that. It'd be a very expensive problem. And the closer you get to the top, you want to make sure, that's why you put those extra pins in there. I probably shouldn't have moved that one so fast. You want to make sure your edges are aligned. And just like in my slipper patterns, the slower you go over this edge, you have all these layers in here, but what you want to do is make sure that they're out of the way while you are, ouch, that did not want to stay aligned there. You just worry about what's underneath your needle at the time. And if you have the function of putting your needle down while you're adjusting, go ahead and do that. Okay, so you don't want puckers in there. So you want to take your, did I just get one in there? You want to take your, okay, and when you hit the middle part, your middle seam, you want to pull that out of the way. There you go. And you just have, I'll show you what that looks like here. The nicer, the slower you go, the nicer edge you're going to have. A nicer shape at the top there. Okay, well, this is why I do these live videos, so you can see. This is exactly what I was talking about. How we had the nice shape coming from this side, but this side has a pucker. And what happened is my seam allowance got mixed up in there, and when I pushed it down, I smushed the fabric. So let me show you what this looks like. Can you guys see this really well? Let me get up here so you can see really well. See, this is going to drive me crazy. I could press this little pucker out. It's just little. It's one stitch. Otherwise, that looks really good. See how my seams are aligned perfectly. I've got a nice shape to it, but this is going to drive me crazy. So I get my seam ripper out, and I'm going to rip that stitch. I'm not going to have to rip the whole thing, because it aligned really nicely, but I'm gonna rip where that happened. Okay, so I ripped that one little stitch out. Okay, now I'm gonna put it back underneath my machine. I'm gonna hold it out, because as long as you don't have puckers where your needle is going, you are not going to get them. So you have a lot of layers there, but you just want to make sure it's out of the way from your needle. And as long as it's out of the way from the needle, you are not going to have that. So let me show you now what that looks like. It's beautiful. So now we have... My camera's backward. Okay. Now we have that nice shape. Here's where we rip that pucker out at. Oh, here's where we rip that pucker out, so you can see that that is gone. Right? Our seams line up beautifully. And we have a nice curve here. Nice curve. That's exactly what you want. And there's no sewing police. If you left that pucker in, good for you. But if if you want it to lay perfectly flat, they cannot have any of those in there. Okay. Do the other side, and see, I'm so used to using the edge of my sewing foot. There we go. Okay. Make sure you're at your seam allowance, even if you've made, I got a thread stuck. Even if you've made these 100 times, make sure you're at your seam allowance. We are gonna line it back up. And we get the layers all situated here, and we'll get down this side. So see, you can use your hand, you can use your fingers for pinning, or you can pin it. It's up to you. Once you make a few, you probably don't need quite as many pins, but and there we go with our second side. The one thing when you don't use quite as many pins at the top, I wanted to show you this. You get that round shape, and it's just a little easier because you're not moving pinned fabric out of the area. But as long as your seams are aligned, it's going to be beautiful. All right, let's go steam. Actually, yeah, let's go steam. Okay, so here's where the ham comes in. We're going to clip or pink our seams that we just did, and do it carefully so you don't end up and clip your cap, because if you do so at this point, there's really no fixing it. You're just going to have to cut a new one out. Oh, we had a question in the group the other day. If it's too big, is there an easy way to take in a seam? No, there's not. It won't look right. And if it's too small, you can't fix that either. That's why welding hats are expensive. It's why they're expensive to custom make, because they're finicky. And welders are finicky, so they're gonna want everything to fit the way they want it to fit. And in fact, my husband used to have headaches all the time from the caps that he bought at the welding supply shop. And then he did not like the band, which is why I've created these. The 1 Plus, because you guys know I love the 4 panel, right? But the 1 Plus to the 6 panel is that once you get it down, they do have a really beautiful shape. They really do. The 4 panel has a great shape too. It's just, you don't have to be so precise at the crown, because it's always going to be flat, because it's where they meet. So that's always going to be that way. Okay. And this is where I bring in the ham to use, because it's not a flat surface like the first time we pressed. So you really want something in there to help you hold these pieces. You could manipulate it maybe with your hand a little bit, but then you risk burning it. So. And this last one. So that's kind of how you use the ham. Now, this looks really good. You have to pick your front and back. And I'm going to say, I'm going to make this one my front, I think. Because, yeah, I like this side. I like this side, but I like this better. So let's go back over to the sewing machine and put our bill on. Okay, so we are at the point where we have our caps made, the lining, and our outer fabric, and now we are going to work on the bill. So we've pressed it, we've sewn it, we've pressed it, and I like to top stitch. So normally I would do it in like a nice little gray to match my fabric here, but I'm out of gray. That is so crazy. But I have a cream, so we're just gonna roll with that. I'm gonna do a really close top stitch here. And you can see what that looks like, and then just keep your threads trimmed as you go so they're not sticking out everywhere. And throw them in your little scrap bucket. So we have that. Really nice along here. I just used the inner edge of my presser foot, and then I am gonna throw a couple lines of zigzags in here. It gives it a little more body and stability, I guess. A little more firmness, I guess, with that extra thread and stitching. It's how most welding kits come from the welding shop, so I guess there's some sort of point to it. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but what I'm guessing is like a little bit of firmness in there. So, all right, I just did a couple. You could do more. I think this is plenty. Oops, I'm gonna snip and throw these threads away, and then I'm gonna let you really see. I'm gonna take my time and show you how I attach. So the first thing I'm going to do is to fold my bill in half, and I'm going to find the center point, and I'm going to just stick a pin there. So it's right in the center. Oh, see, I got it off just a little bit. I want it right in the center. If it's off a little bit, I guess, I mean, it's not the end of the world. And then on your cap, you are going to look and see which front and back you like the best. And I'm going with this one. So, I think, yep, I'm going to go with this one. So that center point, you are going to, actually, you know what? I should have put the pin at the bottom, not at the top. So, let me fold it in half again here. And okay, so I've got my pin right in the center of my bill, and I'm gonna find my center seam on my cap, which is gonna be right here, and I'm going to put right sides together, and I'm going to pin that. Take my other one out, and then I'm gonna align that bottom edge and pin. and align my bottom edge and pin. Now the cap has a little bit of roundness in it. It's a little structured. So it looks funny on the inside, and your bill will be a little wavy, but you just pin it flat. There's no curve here. You just pin it flat, and when you're done sewing, it just goes on, and that's just what it looks like. So it works out really well. So we got the bill on, and I am going to go back to a straight stitch. I'm going to baste it in place, but I'm not going to make my basting stitches so big that I'm going to rip them out. Dusty. So I just want to go along the very edge, and I'm going to run it at about a 3. Why? Because it gives me another layer of security to this bill, because this is going to get a lot of use. This is going to be moved on, front, back, side, ear protection, all sorts of stuff. So we're just going to baste this on here. And trim our threads. So we sewed a straight line all the way across, okay? And our bill is secure. It's secure in here. And you know what's really funny? I am so silly. I fussy cut this bill, and I'm going to show you what I did. Look at this. I fussy cut it upside down. My husband will still love this cap. He is not going to care, but that's really funny. So when you're cutting your bill, this would be your top, right? You don't want this to be your top, which is exactly how I laid it out. All right, so now we're going to put our right sides together. I always have the lining fabric on the outside. I don't know why. I just do. So doesn't really matter. Then you want to take your time, get it in there, and align every seam beautifully. Take your time and put a pin or a clip at every seam intersection. And then put them in between if needed. And if you sewed with precision, your seams should fit together perfectly. Shouldn't have anything left over. Should just fit inside each other beautifully. And we do. It fits great. So what we want to do is we want to start at the bill, because this is also gonna, it's gonna attach it, and this is also where we're gonna be turning it. So I'm gonna stick a pin here, and that tells us when to stop, and I'm gonna stick a pin here. So that gives us a couple inch opening. Okay, if you need a little bit bigger to get your fingers in there, by all means, you know, use more. Give yourself a bigger area, but I'm fine with this. So I'm going to do about a 1/2 inch because that's what works well for my husband. Yours might want it to be a 1/2 inch is what's built into the pattern. So you have your choice with your pattern pieces if you want the low crown, the high crown, or the mid crown. And I'm doing mid crown. From that point, you can adjust it. It's based on a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You can use a 1/4 inch if you want it even longer. You could use 5/8 if you wanted it even shorter. So again, that's personal preference, okay? I give you more information on that in the directions. So you definitely want to cut your pattern based on your crown though. You've already decided that. Then I use a 1/2 inch. You can always adjust it a little bit differently, however your welder likes it. All the way around, making sure you've got those seams stay lined up, because that's how you're going to get a nice look at the end here. Keep your seams lined up. And we're gonna, so when you get to that bill, I always do a couple little back stitches again there. And right here, a couple stitches, and cut our threads. Okay. Clip our threads here, and all right. I'm not, this is pretty much a straight seam. It curves, but it doesn't, okay? It curves, but as you're stitching around, it does not. It looks flat. I'm not clipping it because it's not an angle. I'm keeping it as is because I'm top stitching. I want that bulk in there because I like the way that looks with the top stitch. So we're just going to reach our hands in here. Turn it inside out. And you can see, look how beautifully those seams lined up, right? Time after time. You take your time when you're putting it together and your seams will line up really, really nicely. So you want to spend a little bit of time here getting your edges folded around. And then you're going to iron it one more time and top stitch all the way around. And when you top stitch all the way around, it's going to close this up. And you have got yourself a really cute welding cap. Congratulations! How easy was that? You made your own 6-panel welding cap. The bill looks great. The finish is perfect. It's nice, straight stitch. Although if you wanted to do a zigzag, you could easily do a zigzag. Whatever you choose. It could be even a fun design on your machine. Have a good time with it. If you need more help, check out my Facebook group, Sewcial Designs. I will leave a link to it in the description below. I'll also leave the link to my Etsy shop where you can purchase your 6-panel, your 4-panel. We make slippers. We make all sorts of different things. So to stay up to date with everything that's happening at our little Sewcial beehive, definitely subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Until then, happy sewing and God bless.